Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237 Presents Reslashed. The show where I take a horror classic, its modern day remake, compare them, see which one's better, and ultimately if the remake was even needed. And, I planned on doing these movies today anyway for separate reviews. But then I realized when I got to Reslashed, this is the 6th episode. Thought it was kind of a coincidence, but decided to roll with it. And that is The Omen, both 1976 and 2006. Right off the bat, this is one of my favorite films of all time. Not so much. So, alright. Start off with the cast. Oh, Jesus. We have Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, David Warner, Billy Whitelaw, and in this, you have Julia Stiles, Liev Schreiber, Mia Farrow, David Postlethwaite, Michael Gambon, David Thewlis. Now, you could argue both are great casts, which they are. I mean, I've seen some of these people in really big, well-received movies. Mia Farrow, she was in Rosemary's Baby. Michael Gambon and Pete Postlethwaite, aren't they in like X-Men or something? But the original, Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, David Warner. These were all people that when they agreed to do this, Richard Donner was like, holy hell, how are we getting these people? This is huge. This was like Oscars go horror when it comes to actors. This one is just like, who's big today? Well, ultimately, it gets down to their performance. Everyone in this movie is a winner. They all are top-notch, great performances that you buy and believe, and played with such conviction. This, almost everybody's phoning it the fuck in. Liev Schreiber was sleepwalking through the whole movie. Julia Stiles was just playing Julia Stiles. Mia Farrow, she did fine, but she was so underused. David Thewlis, who played David Warner's character, I thought he actually did a good job. Or a decent job. But he's so as well underplayed, way like less than he is in this. Because also Gregory Peck and David Warner seem like two guys trying to solve this together. They care for each other. With this, I didn't buy that. They didn't have that chemistry. There's nothing to this cast. The cast brought everything to this movie. So that definitely goes to this one. The effects, there wasn't really much effects in this one. This one was a very naturalistic, realistic kind of movie. Granted, yeah, the fact that they had animals like baboons, giraffes, Rottweilers, all trained to do certain things. The matte paintings for backgrounds and skies was well done. The way they created that windstorm for the priest, that was all well done. This was mostly CGI. And with the exception of Keith's beheading, which did have CGI blood squirt, it's CGI, not much to it. Granted, the scarred, paralyzed priest, his makeup was a little bit better in this one, but it still looked like movie makeup. This one was a bit more haunting to look at, especially the way his eye was. So again, but the thing is, The Omen was never meant to be an effects movie, at least in my opinion. So, where less is more, I gotta give it to the original. Atmosphere. Okay, this movie had atmosphere. The graveyard scene alone had tension, had mood. It was spooky. It was just based on that alone. Lots of atmosphere. This didn't have shit. This whole movie felt like a studio film. There was at no part was I immersed into the film in any way. Even the cemetery scene with the dogs or the storm with the priest, it all just felt studio film. Definitely for atmosphere for this. The scares. Alright, well this one had jump scares, so that's out. This was one of those cases where it is truly, you know, well, let's talk about Damien. Damien, sweet, innocent, natural-looking 5-year-old boy. You know, like the birthday party, he's laughing, he's playing, he's waving. When they're at the zoo, he's enjoying himself. He's responsive. Knowing that he's the son of the devil makes that more terrifying. This kid looks like this the entire movie, which doesn't add tension. There are whole scenes where Julia Stiles trying to talk to him and he doesn't answer. It doesn't make him creepy, it just makes him look stupid. And then like when he does talk, he whispers because he's trying to be a scary kid. It didn't work. Also, yeah, it has jump scares. But also, Richard Donner never saw this as a horror movie. He saw it as a thriller. But the scenes that were scary, like the cemetery with the dogs, you know, or the scene where Kathy's in the hospital and Mrs. Baylock's coming at her, that is creepy. That is tense. This didn't have any of that. Because the fact that Kathy was in a bit of a trance and you had the big, you know, close-ups of their eyes as she's scared, Mrs. Baylock's walking towards her. Jerry Goldsmith's score put over it makes it tense. This was just one of those, like you're waiting for something to happen with very little payoff. And this was just an eerie movie. Like, even if you're not superstitious like I'm not, this is just one of those, like, that's awfully creepy. Like, that is eerie to think about. This didn't have any of that. Which goes back to the cast, because if they're sleepwalking and don't seem interested, then I'm not interested. So this was definitely an infinitely scarier movie. Villains, there wasn't really villains per se, but I thought Damien was a more effectively scary kid because of how natural he was. I thought Mrs. Baylock was, you know, intimidating for what she had to do. You know, her scenes, she was creepy. Even though I like Mia Farrow, she didn't do that in this. The Rottweilers were scarier in this one. Because they would have scenes where they're just like standing there. They're in a silhouette. With this, didn't have that either. It was all done poorly. The score, monumentally better with this. Jerry Goldsmith's score is a huge fraction of this movie. Tension, scares, atmosphere. Jerry Goldsmith's, whether it's the chanting, you know, Ave Baby Moose, or just like that little organ chord change, Baby Moose, da, 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 Ave, da, da. Excellent, awesome score. A beautiful as it is dark, ominous, and creepy score. This actually, Fox? Well, this feels like Platinum Dunes. This just had the most generic of cookie cutter mid-2000s horror movie scores. Which, it doesn't even say on the back. Oh, music by Marco Beltrami. Not one memorable scene where a music, a memorable cue. There was nothing for the music department in this. And also just like the cinematography. This movie tries to be stylish. Whether it be like when Liev Schreiber, after the decapitation of Liev Schreiber's, like, the camera starts going like this, with like like his earth is shattering. This movie went for simplistic, subtlety, and realism. And that's what made this work. This movie was light and hopeful when it needed to be. Like cinematography, like the scenes where Damien's a baby and they're all playing together. And it kind of has like photos mixed in with it. This does that too, but there are movies that you can make stylish and interesting. This wasn't one of them. Or maybe it was just the stylistic choices he made, but it just didn't work. So then, which was better? Obviously this one. But like, the necessity or warrant or merit, did this need to be made? No. Because this movie's not even really that dated, other than like the cars. But it doesn't feel dated. I don't think anybody was saying, you know what we need? We need an Omen of today. This needs to be updated. No. And also, like I've said with The Fog, I think I've said it with The Hitcher, if you're even going to credit the original writer, you give him a writing credit because of how much of his material you're using, then what's the point? Re-release this. Give this, a special edition. The only reason this was made, because I said this in my video for this, was because it was June 6th, 2006. 666 was coming up. They needed a gimmick for a film, and that's what this was. That's all this was a gimmick. It just so happened to come out at a time where anything was being remade and no studio was going to question it. They're like, what are we remaking this month? This or that. And it's like, how about a summer release? Well, it is 666. Let's do the Omen. They had a gimmick. Anything new that they brought to it. One thing they brought was the whole how Damien never gets sick. And Kathy thinks that's a bit peculiar. But it goes nowhere. Way too similar to this to stand as its own film. What it did bring was either not interesting or didn't work, other than that one thing. And it just felt rushed. Like I said in that one. Whenever they're saying lines, it just feels like they're delivering pre-existing lines. Like they're just trying to get through it. It's like, hurry up and make this so we can release it on 666. Which, in my opinion, doesn't warrant it being made. It didn't deserve to be made. This movie is a timeless classic. To me, it's a cinematic masterpiece. There are still people that watch it and get creeped out by it. This is a horror film that's not going away. This was forgot by 2007. So, yeah. Winner, of course, goes to this. So, yeah. I did kind of give in to the gimmick of 6th episode, but I didn't think about that till sometime today. So, there you have it. Episode 6 of Reslash, The Omen. Remake didn't be made. Original's a classic. The end. So, thank you for watching.